Welcome back. As Canadian businesses brace for potential tariffs, new survey results suggest that almost half of them are willing to shift their operations south of the border if necessary. Candice Lang is CEO of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Candice, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Were you surprised with that KPMG survey that found such a high number? Many, and in fact, at 80+%, have already started moving goods south of the border in preparation. But the idea of actually changing their supply chains in order to cope, is that surprising?
I don't think it's surprising. I think it's actually really an important part of the discussion right now is we're very focused on tariffs, Amanda, but I think a lot of businesses are focused not only on tariffs maybe being used as the tactic as they are for non-trade related concessions, but this broader agenda that we're facing, which includes tariffs, but it also includes these other aspects that are in the mix when we're looking at major changes in the U.S. to tax and regulation. And I think that's the conversation that businesses are facing and what we're focused on at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce in terms of what we need to be looking at to make sure Canada is attractive and remains open to business.
And it's actually so rational that businesses would think that way, because we do have these indications that, yes, there may be some negotiating, some bluster around the border, but there might also be a long-term rethink underway of what the trade relationship looks like and where manufacturing happens, all the rest of it. In that case, Candice, how much can business do on its own? How much of this has to be a government of Canada kind of industrial policy response to what's happening?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's both of us, as it has been in our attempt to avoid any such tariff scenario to begin with, making sure we're all working on all fronts to bring data to the discussion and the facts, which is really frustrating when we're facing the narrative on our trade relationship that Trump is continuously perpetuating. So we've put our Canada-U.S. trade tracker in the hands of everyone, business and government, to make sure we're all pushing forward on that agenda. But now I think it's a key moment for business to say, we are here to support. And in particular, we think from the Canadian Chamber and the network of chambers we have in the country, we are advocating that we all work together at this moment on tackling our barriers to internal trade, because as we face AV in a 25% tariff scenario, we're worried about a 2.6 impact to our GDP. We can counter that and actually look at the 4% of our GDP we live with on the table every year with the tariff-like barriers we have on internal trade.
Definitely low-hanging fruit. Maybe this is the catalyst. Sort of in a bigger picture way, if we think about the trade relationship, there are other things we do on trade, and the supply marketing boards would be one of them. We know it's an irritant, especially the dairy marketing board with the U.S. and the U.K. and others. Should we be thinking that way of becoming more free traders, or should we actually think about what industries we want to get protectionist on? I know that's contrary to the way we normally think, but if that's the way the U.S. is going, do we need to do the same?
You know, I think at this point, we would say we are a trading nation. Trade is such a big part of our economy. We have, such a lot in terms of, you look at our natural resources, that I think we want to strengthen the trading nation that we are and look to all those avenues. And that includes, how do we make sure we actually have free and freer trade in Canada? And we have many, many other markets that there's like many opportunities that we can lean more heavily into. This is an inflection point for Canada. I think, our will to maybe press forward and even tackling some of those trade-like barriers on the home front, we haven't had as much pressure to, because we've had good business to the south. And now the reality is we have to do business in all directions.
Candice, so good to have you with us. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Candice Lang, CEO of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Time for the takeaway and a David and Goliath moment. Workers at Amazon's Quebec facilities were devastated to learn the company would shutter its branded operations in the province. The retail giant said that for reasons of efficiency and profitability, it will shift back to contract fulfillment and delivery. Is it a coincidence that workers at an Amazon warehouse in Laval successfully unionized last May? That would make it just the second North American location for Amazon to be unionized. The other, in Staten Island, has been certified for 2.5 years, but has yet to sign a contract. Now, if all of that isn't interesting enough, enter Canada's industry minister, who happens to hail from the province of Quebec. François-Philippe Champagne says he will fight the Amazon decision by reviewing Ottawa's business with the company. That could be little more than political bluster, since Amazon has numerous contracts that might not be in the government's interest to sever. Let's face it, we probably need them more than they need us. But it was a show of support for the 1,700 workers across 7 facilities who will soon be unemployed. Is there more the government could do to help the workers? Well, here's a thought that doesn't feel too radical. The employees in Laval, like the employees in BC who've also voted to unionize, had real concerns. Those included low wages, inadequate health and safety measures, and what they describe as a hectic workplace. All of those are legitimate complaints, unless they aren't. Canada has pretty good labor laws and worker protections built in, both provincially and federally. Wages have to meet a minimum standard, for instance, and health and safety are expected to meet or exceed provincial regulations. If they don't, that is certainly a place for government to step in. Beyond those issues, a private company has a right to operate as it sees fit, attracting workers or not, as the case may be, based on the salary and the work itself. Would other Quebec employees have happily taken these jobs rather than have them disappear? Quite possibly. But then again, that may not be the healthiest test of how a company conducts itself. If Minister Champagne wants to do something, it might be worth looking how the employment standards of Quebec are holding up to the light of day. My takeaway? Government shouldn't bully business into employing people, but it should make sure they aren't bullying the ones they do employ. That's Taking Stock for this week. I'm Amanda Lang. Thanks for being with us.